All right, so let's jump into this problem. The polynomial p of x and q of x are defined above. Which of the following polynomials is divisible by x minus 1? All right, so let's look at these carefully. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start with my q of x first. So let's look at my q of x carefully. What I want to figure out is if q of x is divisible by x minus 1. So if I start with my q of x, which I know going to be equal to x squared minus 2 of x plus 5. To figure out if it's divisible by x minus 1, it's equivalent, using the remainder and factor theorem, of saying q of 1 equal to 0. Now, if q of 1 equal to 0, this would implies that x minus 1 is a factor of q of x. Now, let's try. So if I do q of 1, it is clear to see that it's going to be 1 squared minus 2 plus 5, which is obviously not equal to 0. And if this is not equal to 0, if q of 1 is not equal to 0, it is suggesting that x minus 1 is not a factor of q of x. So if I get that now, let me just switch up my colors. What I'm going to do now is looking at my p of x, I know that my p of x, just by looking at that, I know that I can factor out a negative 2. So if I factor out a negative 2, my result here going to give me x squared minus 2x plus 5. So in essence, my p of x is the same thing as my, well, negative 2x times my q of x. So I know that p of x is going to be equal to that. Now let's check check my answers now. Let's switch up my colors again. Let's use a nicer color. Let's use blue this time. So let's check A as my first option. So for A, I know that my p of x, which I could replace with negative 2x times q of x minus 1/2 my q of x. Now if I factor out my q of x right here, this is simply going to be equal to negative 2x minus 1/2. Now by clear observation, I know that q of x is not divisible by x minus 1, and obviously it's also not divisible. Negative 2x minus 1/2 is not divisible by x minus 1. So I know that for that much. So A cannot be my answer. Now let's switch up my colors again and let's try B. Now for B now, carefully, I'm going to have negative 1/2. I know that p of x is going to be negative 2 x q of x, good, minus my q of x. So by clear observation right here, I can see that negative 1/2 times negative 2 going to simply be x q of x minus q of x. Factor out my q of x now. Let's switch up my colors again. Factoring out my q of x. This here going to be x minus 1. Now again, by clear observation, I know that q of x is not divisible by x minus 1, but x minus 1 is divisible by x minus 1. As a result, B is going to be my answer, because I can clearly see that q of x times x minus 1 is divisible by x minus 1. So this is going to be my answer.